Other day, the Mavic 3 got a huge update, bringing a whole load of functionality and changes to the camera layout. Well, as is often the case, the Mini 2 piggybacks along on that. A lot of the camera settings have now changed, and that is what I'm talking about today. Hello, I'm Ian and I play with drones, and as I said the other day, the Mavic 3 got a bit of a big update. Now the Fly app was updated to accommodate a lot of these changes, and in doing so it's actually changed some of the camera settings that will affect you if you're flying the Mini 2. So I thought I'd do a very quick recap on what the various settings are and how to access them and how they can improve the photos and videos that you take. First off, of course, make sure you are on the latest version of the Fly app. You need to be on 1.5.8, that's for both Android and iOS. iOS should prompt you automatically to update, and in many cases Android will also prompt you to update, but if it doesn't, or if you're using a device that isn't technically supported by DJI's Fly app, then you need to go to dji.com/downloads and download the app directly to your phone, and you may need to tick the allow installation from an unauthorized source if that's the situation you're in with your particular device. Either way, once the app has updated, it's also a good idea to make sure you're on the latest version of firmware. You can do that by switching on the drone and the remote. Go to the three dots top right, scroll across to about and down, and you see the check for update next to the firmware. You've got to have internet connection for that. Give it a quick tap, it'll take a few seconds, and it'll either prompt you to update the firmware or it'll happily tell you that you're already on the latest version of the firmware. So that's how you make sure you are fully up to date. Once you are up to date, you can now explore some of the new functions. So let's get the Mini up into the air. Hey, leave it. Come on. So I have done a full tutorial on all the camera settings. Like I said though, good to have a good quick recap. By default, it's going to be in auto mode, and you see that down the bottom you've got the three indicators. You've got the storage capacity, you've got the resolution and frames per second, and you've got the EV, the exposure value. So if you tap that now, auto hasn't changed, so you've still got the sliders along the bottom, so you can choose. If you have a low resolution, for instance, you'll be able to go up to a higher frames per second, so you can get up to 60 frames per second if you're in 1080 mode, but if you're in 4K, then 30 frames per second is the most you can do. The EV value, exposure value, pretty much tend to just leave that on 0, to be honest. And obviously the storage is literally how much capacity you have got left. So if you tap the little camera symbol on the lower right, says auto. When you tap that, changes to pro mode, and you can now see the settings are actually segregated into two halves. On the left, you've got the storage, you've got the resolution, the frame rate, and the temperature of the sensor. I'll come on to that in a second. And on the right, you've got the other group of settings like the shutter speed, the ISO, and the manual metering. Now, the manual metering is literally an indication of how it thinks your settings are compared to how it should be on automatic. You can see here the picture is looking pretty gloomy and dark, and sure enough, the MM value is showing -2.3. It's basically saying you've got things too dark and it's going to be underexposed. So if we tap the right hand side, see now it brings up a whole different set of sliders, and you can change the ISO to increase that. 800 probably a little bit too high. 400. You can change the shutter speed, and you can see that manual metering mode now changes as you change the settings. You can't actually adjust the manual metering mode, that's not a slider. So what you've actually got is, as you change, for instance, the shutter speed to a higher shutter speed, it's going to make the picture darker, and that's why manual metering is saying, hang on, you've got it wrong and you're going even darker than you should be. So let's get the 1/40th of a second. It's a gloomy day here in England, and it's quite late in the afternoon, 3:30. The sun will be setting in an hour or so, so we haven't actually got that much daylight. Let's have a little look at Molly Dog there. Thank you. So maybe knock the ISO right up to 800, and then we can put that shutter speed 1/50th. You see, look, 1/40th. It's actually saying now we're pretty much right. Yeah, okay, 130. That's going to be a little bit slow. So stick to say 140. So if you tap the left hand button, the little sliders there, it brings up the other set of controls. Like at the top, you've got the color temperature of the sensor. Like I said, you probably want to leave that on auto. If you actually, I have done another video on that, as I said, but if you slide that down, now generally a lower K value is a warmer light. The way DJI implement it is that the sensor is expecting a warmer light, so therefore the resulting picture is colder. It is the way it works. It just sounds back to front. So conversely, if you actually slide it right up to 7, even 8,000 K, see how nice and warm everything looks now. It's almost a little bit electric green, to be honest. But that's actually a good way of compensating for the drab and dreary grey overcast conditions. It at least makes the ground look like the sun's shining, even if it's not. Anyway, like I said, you probably want to experiment with the colour sensitivity. Good for sunsets as well. I took some lovely photos and video of sunrise the other morning as well. And then, like I said, lower down you've got the resolution of the video you want to take, and depending on what resolution you have set, you then open up different frames per second. And then right down the bottom you've just got information on the SD card. So all fairly straightforward really, but if you don't know what these settings do, then you won't know. So that's why it's good to have a little refresher. Like I said, if you actually flip over to, press the button over there onto stills, okay, you have a completely different set of settings for still photography, and I'm in pro mode, and you can see suddenly we've gone very dark here. So if you're in that situation and you're a little bit panicky, just tap the lower right to put it back into auto. We'll bring everything back for you. Let's have a quick look at what was so wrong in pro mode there. Tap the right hand section, it brings that up. So it's an ISO of 100. Well, you're never going to get really very far with 100 on such a grey day today. And again, the shutter speed. So we can bring the shutter speed down, and you can see that manual metering at the very bottom, getting closer and closer to 0, which is what you actually want. So see, yeah, it shows you just how grim the day is. 30th of a second shutter speed on a 400 ISO is what we need in order to take a decent photo. So yeah, really not the best day for taking photos or videos, but at least now you understand what the different settings are. And then the other side, when you tap the little sliders, this time you have got different settings here again for still photos. So at the top again, you've still got the color sensitivity. You can play around with that, and you can, as before, make things appear warmer by sliding it up, or colder by sliding it down. Again, on a gloomy grey day like today, probably nicer to have it a little bit high. Below that, you've got the format that it's going to record the files in, JPEG or JPEG plus RAW. Obviously, if you're going to be doing a lot of editing in Photoshop or something like that, you would definitely want to be recording, grabbing those RAW files as well. You're going to have a lot more information, and you won't be suffering the compression of JPEGs. But obviously, JPEGs are nice and easy for you to email and pop up into social media. And then finally, you've got the picture format, of course, widescreen 16:9 or standard 4:3. I am a widescreen boy. And then you've got the SD card. So that's about it. These settings are crucial for getting good photos and good videos, so you do have to know what each one does. I have done another video on actually getting the most out of using ND filters, lowering down the light even more on a bright sunny day, and you can get some good effects, and I'll put a little link to that. But anyway, look, it's a nice little change. It's good to hear that, or good to see that DJI are listening to customer feedback. There was a lot of unhappiness about the sliders when Pro mode was introduced. It looked good, but if you've got big fat paws like mine, it was quite difficult to move the sliders along the bottom of your phone screen, especially if you had a curved edge phone screen like I used to have. Well, now I'm using the big Triple Tech 8-inch. I haven't got that problem, but it is still much nicer having these all these settings in a nice big easy to use format. Anyway, look, nice quick video today. Like I said, it's always good when we get a little update and things are made easier and better to use. Give us a little thumbs up if you like this, and as usual, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, until next time, have fun and happy flying.